The world just called Vladimir Putin's bluff, and the panic is visible. Putin wanted to blackmail the United States with his nuclear missile, but his political theater has failed spectacularly. The crisis began with a desperate lie. Putin ordered a nuclear cruise missile test, hoping to scare Trump into dropping sanctions. As soon as Putin made that announcement, Kremlin TV started talking about how they can destroy US cities like Washington, Chicago, Seattle, and Los Angeles. Putin claimed that this missile flew for 14,000 kilometers. But unfortunately, Norway said that there was no nuclear radiation. In simple terms, Russia was lying. This blatant failure of Russian power triggered an immediate and humiliating response from President Trump. He publicly reminded Putin that the US has a bigger nuclear stockpile and threatened to renew nuclear testing. The fear of US power was so profound that the Kremlin actually surrendered. After bragging about hitting Washington and Chicago, Putin's spokesperson apologized for the misunderstanding, admitting that the test was not actually a nuclear test. Putin is now running out of options. His last plan was to scare the American people. But that's not gonna work anymore. Just listen to what Kremlin TV was saying. They wanted to hit American cities.
Let's assume the worst case scenario. We're working in conditions of total isolation. So what?
Well, we'll just continue to be in the conditions.
No, we'll finally switch to other types of weapons. We'll finally strike with our full might. We'll finally stop playing around. We'll finally wipe everything off the face of the earth and then calm down.
As for weapons, this is indeed a very important issue. Because if Oreshnik, which you insist on, is for Paris, London, and the like,
then Burevestnik is for Washington, Chicago, Seattle, Los Angeles.
14,000 kilometers. It can fly around several times and then hit Kyiv.
It didn't come from our side.
Unfortunately for Russian propagandists, Putin's nuclear missile did not actually work. You see, after the test, Putin claimed that this missile had unlimited range and ability to evade all defensive systems. He also claimed that the missile flew for 15 hours, traveling more than 9,000 miles or 14,000 kilometers. But you guys know what the kids are saying now? Talk is cheap. Can you back it up? Well, the only thing Putin had to back up his claim was this animated video that the Russian state TV released. This looks like a cartoon. And Putin, if you're listening, if you need help upgrading your production quality, I'm sure my team can help. But you see, there's a reason why Putin used this animated footage and not the actual footage. That's because the last 2 times Russia tested this missile, things did not go according to plan. The first time, the whole test lasted for 5 seconds, and the second time, it lasted for 13 seconds. But both times, the nuclear-powered engine just did not start. So the missile did not go anywhere. I'm guessing something similar happened again, and that's why we're seeing this cartoon animation. Now, we know Russian nuclear engines don't work, so I'm guessing Putin doesn't know all the details as to what happens when they do work. Because you see, if a nuclear-powered missile did take off, then there would be radiation particles in the atmosphere that the other countries could easily detect. Well, Russia claimed that they started this test in the Arctic Circle, but the Norwegian military confirmed that there was a test that Russia carried out, but it was not a nuclear test in any sense of the way. They did not detect any increase in radiation. In simple words, Russia launched a missile, but it was not a nuclear-powered missile. Russia was lying. Shocking. But you see, the goal of this test was pretty obvious. They wanted to scare the United States, and they were hoping that we would fall for it again. Unfortunately though, Putin's nuclear threats are just like Russian cars. Lot of smoke, no movement. But this time, all that smoke is actually backfiring into Putin's own face. Because this is what President Trump said after Putin's nuclear bluff.
Russia said this week that they've tested a new missile that can go more than 8,000 miles. Is that saber-rattling for you? What is that?
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shores. So, I mean, it doesn't have to go 8,000 miles. And they're not playing games with us. We're not playing games with them either. We test missiles all the time, but you know, we do have a submarine, a nuclear submarine. We don't need to go 8,000 miles. And I don't think it's an appropriate thing for Putin to be saying either, by the way. He ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon 4th year. That's what he ought to do instead of testing missiles.
In my opinion, this was actually a very measured comment, especially after what Putin was trying to pull. But as you guys know, Putin is like an old dog. He only knows one trick. So he wasn't gonna give up so easily, especially when his economy is struggling so bad under the sanctions. So he tried the nuclear bluff one more time. The very next day, this time he was gonna go with a nuclear torpedo. Take a listen.
Вы должны это знать. Мы вчера провели еще одно испытание.
You should know that yesterday we conducted another test of yet another promising system, the Poseidon unmanned underwater vehicle with a nuclear power unit. For the first time, we managed not only to launch it with a launch engine from a carrier submarine, but also to launch the nuclear power unit on which this vehicle passed a certain amount of time.
Запустить его с подводной лодки носителя, но и запустить атомную энергетическую установку, на которой этот аппарат прошел.
This is a huge success. Poseidon's power significantly exceeds that of even our most promising Sarmat intercontinental range missile. There is nothing like the Sarmat in the world. We do not have it on duty yet, but it will be soon. But Poseidon far exceeds Sarmat in power. Moreover, in terms of speed and the depths at which this unmanned vehicle can operate, there is nothing comparable in the world. It is unlikely anything similar will appear in the near future, and there are no means of interception.
По глубинам движения этого беспилотного аппарата в мире ничего подобного нет.
Now, I'm sure you guys know, Russia is running low on cash, so we should not expect them to keep track of all the lies they are saying. After all, bookkeeping is very, very expensive. But this is where Putin messed up. You see, this is the same missile system that Putin bragged about in 2023, saying that it's already entering combat duty. And now, in 2025, he's saying that the same missile is about to enter combat duty. I feel for little Vladimir because after all, nuclear bluffs was the only thing he had that had some kind of impact on the battlefield. And now, they're just not working anymore. So Putin is running out of nuclear names he can use to blackmail the world. It's just rinse and repeat hoping it works. But this is not 2023. As President Bush once said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, you can't get fooled again. Well, the world is not getting fooled. There's a reason United States spends 1% of world GDP on its army. And I want to clarify that again. It's 1% of world's GDP, not US GDP. Sometimes you gotta remind people what our nuclear deterrent is. This was the message President Trump put out. The United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country. This was accomplished, including a complete update and renovation of existing weapons during my first term in office. Because of the tremendous destructive power, I hated to do it, but had no choice. Russia is second, China is a distant third, but will be even within 5 years. Because of other countries' testing programs, I wonder who he's talking about there. I have instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. That process will begin immediately. Now, some people are freaking out about this, and we'll clarify later why that panic may not be well suited. But for everyone, one thing should be clear. This is exactly what a nuclear deterrence is. Mutually assured destruction means that if other guy is using his nuclear stick a bit too much, you remind him that we have a bigger stick and we actually maintain our stick. Meaning, while Russia was going bankrupt in the 90s, US actually had money to make sure our nuclear weapons don't become duds. On top of all this, we actually know that this type of nuclear deterrence actually works with Russia. Because back in the 60s when Khrushchev tried putting a nuclear missile in Cuba, President Kennedy blockaded the island and told the Soviet leader that if Cuba strikes the United States, we'll see that as a Soviet strike and hit back against the Soviets. And guess what happened next? Khrushchev decided to pull his missile back. Just another example of how Russians understand strength, not appeasement. And guess what? Same thing is happening again. After President Trump put this statement out, Putin's spokesperson came out publicly to clarify the misunderstanding. And I'm sure you guys are wondering, why didn't Putin do it himself? That's because little Vladimir doesn't like associating himself with weaknesses. So he's always there to make the nuclear bluff, but he's never there to walk back that mistake. That's why he has Peskov. And just listen to what he said.
Президент Трамп в своем заявлении упомянул о том, что другие страны занимаются, дескать...
In his statement, President Trump mentioned that other countries are conducting nuclear weapons tests. Until now, we were not aware that anyone was conducting tests. And if he is referring to the testing of the Burevestnik missile, that is by no means a nuclear test. All countries are engaged in developing their defense systems, but this is not a nuclear test. The United States is a sovereign country and has the right to make sovereign decisions. But I would like to recall President Putin's statement, which has been repeated many times. If anyone deviates from the moratorium, Russia will act accordingly.
So let me get this straight. Before we reminded Russia that we have nuclear weapons too, Putin was bragging about how this new missile is unmatched and it has unlimited range. But after we showed them our stockpile, all of a sudden Russia is saying that it was not a nuclear test, it was only a nuclear-powered missile. Now, that's an important distinction, by the way, because after President Trump made that comment, everyone started complaining that no, this is not the right move because we don't want to restart nuclear testing in the world. And that's a fair argument, I'll give you that. Because you see, for the last decade or two, every major power has kinda agreed to not carry out any more nuclear tests. For United States, that's actually a huge positive because we have the biggest nuclear stockpile, and on top of that, we have the highest quality nuclear stockpile. That means if no one is testing any more nuclear weapons, we'll always be the country with the biggest nuclear deterrent. So, of course, we don't want to break that taboo on nuclear test because if we do it, then China will do it, and that means China can use that excuse to catch up with us in the nuclear deterrent field. But this is where I do want to point out that even in his statement, President Trump clarifies that our testing will be on an equal basis to that of Russia. And Russia is testing nuclear-powered missiles, as they just claimed. So we don't know if they're testing it, but that's what they're claiming. So even if US matches that nuclear testing, that just means we're going to test some kind of nuclear-powered missile or some kind of nuclear-powered weapon. I don't know the exact details, but he's not saying we're going to test a nuclear bomb. And that's something we don't want to do. But now let's come back to Russia because Russian media is still having a meltdown. This time because of Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent. You guys remember when Putin's personal propagandist Kirill Dmitriev was here in the United States to basically tell everyone that Trump's sanctions are not hurting the Russian economy, and on top of that, Russia has this big powerful missile that the world should be scared about. Well, this is when Scott Bessent went on national television to basically tell the world that don't listen to a Russian propagandist. What else is he supposed to say? Take a listen.
Vladimir Putin's envoy, who is here in the United States, Kirill Dmitriev, I know you know him, said the sanctions will have, quote, absolutely no effect on Russia's economy. They will simply lead to higher prices at gas stations in the United States. Is Dmitriev wrong? And when will Russia actually feel the pain?
Well, I think Russia is going to feel the pain immediately. I can tell you that we've already seen India has done a complete halt of Russian oil purchases. Many of the Chinese refineries they have stopped. And, you know, Margaret, are you really going to publish what a Russian propagandist says? I mean, what else is he going to say? That, oh, it's going to be terrible and it's going to bring Putin to the table? What do you think is going to happen to him if he goes back home and says, the good Lord, you know, what if he had said on TV, this is terrible. President Trump just did the right thing. This is a maximum pressure campaign that's going to work. Margaret, what's he going to say? Of course he's going to say this. If you go through and look at every Russian talking point, they seem to use the word, we have immunized the economy against this. Well, they haven't immunized the economy. Their oil earnings are down 20% year over year. I would suspect that this could take them down another 20 or 30%. So, you know, again, that President Trump was criticized for not doing enough. He takes this bold maneuver, and then you're quoting a Russian propagandist.
Clearly, Russians were not happy about this because one of the biggest show in Russia that we just watched at the beginning of the video reacted to this in a very, very interesting way. Take a listen.
For example, Scott Bessent is being rude to Kirill Dmitriev for some inexplicable reason. Why is he talking so much about Russia? Where is he and where is Russia? He's threatening sanctions packages that he didn't draft. This was drafted in the Biden era. What is this systemic hatred about? Is it related to his sexual orientation?
I don't know about you guys, but whenever I start to lose an argument, that's when I turn to personal attacks. And this is exactly what's happening in Russian television. Now, let's think about it. This Russian propagandist, Kirill Dmitriev, came to the United States and went on national TV here in the US and started telling everyone that Russia just tested a nuclear missile. That was the wording he was using. And he was like, I came here to tell the White House exactly that. You don't want to be messing with Russia. If someone's doing that, I think it's completely fair to go on national TV and push back against that propaganda. So, if Russians think that's disrespectful, if Russians think that that's ruining the relationship between two countries, maybe they should stop blackmailing the world with nuclear missiles. And this is exactly why I think it was a great thing that we had Treasury Secretary go on television and call this out. Otherwise, what happens is that US media just runs with whatever the Russia is saying. And then everyone who's not following this war closely gets scared, and that puts pressure on the administration, on our politicians to do policy that's favorable to Russia. And that's the Russian goal after all. They cannot win on the battlefield, so they want to win using the narrative warfare, using the informational warfare. That's exactly why we're making videos like this, to fight back against Russian propaganda. Now, unfortunately, as many of you guys may know, sometimes our videos do get demonetized or restricted for showing some clips from the war that YouTube doesn't think is advertiser friendly. Now, it is YouTube's website, so they can decide what we can post and what we cannot post. But this is exactly why we just launched our own platform called Basics Insider. We have built it for deeper and uncensored coverage of the war. Inside there, you'll find extended versions of some of our videos, original documentaries that go way beyond what we can talk about here on YouTube. And on top of that, my favorite part is that we have experts and experienced veterans like former Navy SEAL Chuck Farr that come on regularly and help us break down battlefield clips from wars like one in Ukraine. Now, as you guys can guess, these are types of clips that we cannot show on YouTube. But then again, this is the reality of the world we live in. This is how modern wars are being fought. So I personally believe that it's really important for us to learn about what's happening and how it's happening. And that's why we're making these videos and we're putting it on Basics Insider. Personally, even for me, this is something that's been really educational, and hopefully all of you that join us there feel the same way. So if you're someone who's interested in content like this, then you can sign up right now by going to basicsinsider.com or click the link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen. You can get access to great content by signing up right now, and on top of that, you'll be supporting our channel and supporting our coverage. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys in the next one.